Welcome to the Witness Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Trader, and this is episode 8. Have you ever found yourself in a situation and realized you actually had no control over the outcome? Ever been overwhelmed by helplessness and the only thing you can do is worry? But you know worrying does absolutely nothing to help, and in fact may only make the situation worse. Those feelings can be compounded exponentially when the situation you face affects not only you, but someone you love more than you can express. Someone like your kid. Our next witnesses found themselves in just such a situation. Their son was diagnosed with a rare kidney condition, and they had no idea where that road was going to lead. They found themselves on a heart-wrenching journey where even trusting God seemed like folly. Ladies and gentlemen, I call to the stand Steven and Meaghan Dennis. Thank you guys for being willing to come on the Witness Podcast today and share a little bit. This is a little bit of a different situation here. Instead of just having one witness on the stand, I have two, but they're married, so technically they are one. So, but they're going to share with us a little bit about some of the things they've been through. But we'll start, as we always do, from the beginning, and we'll let you guys decide who goes first. But we'd like to know, where you're from, where you were born, how you got your start in life.
All right. Megan's volunteered me to go first. So as Kevin introduced, I'm Steven Dennis. I'm here with my wife, Meaghan Dennis. I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland. Pretty much born and raised in that area all my life.
In the city of Annapolis?
In the city of Annapolis, yes, sir. I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, and Shadyside, Maryland.
Oh, okay.
So I was kind of in between there. Maybe just some kind of so that's where I grew up at. That's the city I'm from.
What kind of upbringing did you have? Were you raised in church?
No, not necessarily. I actually was a bus ministry kid. That was my first introduction to church.
Oh, how old were you?
I would say I was maybe fourth grade, third or fourth grade.
Okay.
Yeah, third or fourth grade.
So for people that might not be familiar with that,
Yeah.
Our bus ministry, we send buses into some of the neighborhoods in Annapolis where people may not be able to have easy access to get to church. And we pick up a lot of kids in those neighborhoods and bring them up to our church for Sunday school. So, Steven, you're saying that was your first introduction.
Yeah. So that was my first introduction. My family did have some history with church, particularly Antioch, the Apostolic Church. My aunt went to Antioch Christian School. My grandmother attended an apostolic faith, ended up at Antioch. But we didn't have a home that was reflective of, church environment. So my earliest experiences were when I was living in Newtown 20 in Annapolis. Verno Spriggs was our bus driver.
Senior?
Senior,
okay.
Yeah. And the bus would come into our neighborhood and pick us up. My first introduction to the church from that perspective was Trishia Alders and a number of other people in the community handing out flyers, inviting the kids to church. And that's how I got plugged in. And Brother Valentino Owens was my Sunday school teacher, him and his wife.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So that was pretty much the foundation of my introduction to church, to God, to the Bible. And early on, there was a immediate interest in knowing more about the Word. When I heard it taught, I was totally captivated by the message of the Bible, about the message of Christ, and those things really got planted in my heart at a young age, and they stuck with me as I went along. So that's kind of my first intro.
So did you continue to come to church all the way up until now, or did you have a period where you stepped away?
Definitely had some gaps up until the place where I was really founded in church. So when I was younger, I was baptized in Jesus' name. I had an understanding of what it was, and I wanted to be baptized.
And you were, 9?
Yeah, probably around that age. And so the bus ministry came into my neighborhood while I was living in Newtown. Then we moved to Robinwood. And there wasn't not much of a group there in Robinwood, so the bus would come through. maybe my attendance wasn't as, consistent. But eventually the church ended up planning a daughter work in there, or a smaller congregation renting rec center. And that was Paul and Rhonda Gross, who they played a significant role in just keeping me close to the body of Christ. And so, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, how old were you when you were like really locked in?
So I was about 18 years old. It was right after my senior year. I had moved with my dad to Shadyside, Maryland, and I was attending Southern High School, was playing on the basketball team. At that year, I was a starter, and I had the most fun. It was just a great time, kind of reuniting with people that I went to elementary school with, because up until 5th grade, I attended Shadyside Elementary, and I moved with my grandmother while my dad was working nights and going to school at night. And so,
were your parents together? Or?
No,
Okay.
my parents weren't together. My family. It's a lot of dynamics here that we could unfold.
Yeah, let's go, man.
But just to kind of stay on the first question you asked me, just kind of my journey and how getting introduced to the faith and that path. So I mentioned Paul and Rhonda Gross. They started the daughter work in Robinwood using a rec center and having church there. And like I said, they were a huge role in just the teaching. Brother Paul Gross was so passionate, and just he had a heart for the people he was teaching. Even if it was that particular day, 8 or 9 people, he preached like he was talking to a huge crowd. He really cared for the souls, and I picked up on that at a young age. And probably around my teen years, I had the idea, or I felt the pressure of that salvation part that I hadn't experienced, which was receiving the Holy Ghost. And I would be in services, and I was sincerely seeking. And I don't know the dynamics or what it was, God's timing, or what played a part in that. I'd begin to get a little bit discouraged. And when I would come to church and pray, and I felt that pressure of if nothing was happening on that part, as far as like the experience of speaking other tongues and experiencing that, I felt a little bit pressured for that to happen. I felt God. I felt the experiences. I felt God drawing. But then, I kind of got a little bit discouraged, I would say, to be honest. And then other life stuff started happening. My mom had really heavy drug addiction, and just little things are in the home, really. It wasn't so much the church pressure, but it was a combination of different things, and I just kind of...
So, but you're growing up in a house where more or less you're the only person attending church regularly?
From a bus ministry standpoint, and then moving, I would say that my family, when we went to the Robinwood Rec Center, we all went to the Robinwood Rec Center. Yeah, I would say that was the case up until really the difference was after my senior year. And I, really recognized my need for a Savior. It was one of those things where every night I could recall, man, I go to bed every night praying, asking for forgiveness and asking that. But that was my understanding of God. That was my limited view of God at that time. And I don't think I really felt the impact of needing a Savior until like after my senior year and after senior week. And just I felt so heavy about some of my lifestyle choices and sin. I felt very convicted. But because of that foundation that I had from Sunday school and bus ministry, like I remember talking to a friend. I said, you know what, I just need to get back to church. I just need to go back to church. I was very broken. I was very torn. And that's what I did. I went back to church, started coming back to Antioch when we were at Annapolis Senior High School. And from there, I ended up getting filled with the Holy Ghost. And that was kind of the launch of, just me sticking and God really shaping and growing me.
Yeah, you make an interesting point that I never really thought about. Like, you go through a period of time where you're aware of God, and you kind of just want to make sure you're good with Him.
Yes.
Like, you just want to feel like Him and I are okay. But as you grow, as you get to know Him, I guess it kind of changes. It transitions from all of a sudden you realize, no, I really need God.
Yeah.
I can't. I can't
Yes.
really make it in life without him.
Yeah.
You know, it goes from him just being somebody that you're good with to like, no, I gotta lock into this guy. You know.
Yeah, because I would say growing up, there was a lot of dysfunction around me. I had, family members in and out of legal situations, getting locked up and, crime. And I mentioned drug addiction and different things like that. And so I'm observing all of these things. I'm watching all the people before me. And that helped me to make the decision like, hey, I don't want any part with drugs because I saw how I tore my family up from heavy drugs to drinking. I experienced some really deep things that really kind of pushed me away from those things. And, so I kind of, for the most part, lived a clean life in a sense, So it wasn't until my sin really hit me, like the choices that I made where I'm hurting people or being hurt, and I realized, man, I need a savior, just like everybody else.
Amen.
Yeah.
So, what was your household like when you were growing up? Was your dad around at all?
Yes, sir. My dad was definitely around. He was a huge influence also on like why I always thought about, I care about what my dad thinks, It was like I didn't want to, I cared, and he was around and took me to sports, got me involved in sports, took me to games as he could. As I mentioned, a period of time he worked nights. And so just to talk a little about my dad, when I moved with my dad when I was just before I started kindergarten. I moved with my dad. I was living with my mom and my two older siblings, my brother and sister. And my dad, one day, I remember him coming up in his, I think it was an Oldsmobile. He picked me up in a burgundy Oldsmobile, and we just headed down the Shady Side. And from there up until 5th grade, I stayed with him. And I remember I would pray out, as a prayer we used to pray as kids was, now lay me down to sleep. Yeah. And I said to my dad while I was praying one day, I was like, Dad, I can't like mention everybody's names when they say God bless my mom and dad. He said, son, just say Lord bless my mom, Lord bless my dad, and Lord bless everybody in my family. And so in a way that my dad was really influential in that way, although he wasn't really I think he had some foundations of Christian belief.
Yeah.
But he really helped kind of lay those moral principles in my life. Even though my family was really kind of dysfunctional in a sense, he was present, and he taught me a lot of, like when my mom was going through her drug addiction and, I'm living in a community like Newtown and Robinwood, and kids are teasing and making fun, and, all of that kind of builds up. And they got to a point where I was a little resentful towards my mom. And so I wouldn't say I was like use very disrespectful language, but there was a time I remember my dad corrected me when she was out really strung out on drugs. And my dad just corrected me and he just let me know, hey, your mom is in this place, but that does not leave an open door for you to be disrespectful at all.
And at the time, he's not with her.
And they're not together. Yeah,
thing.
and yeah, he's my dad's a great man, and I respect him deeply. And so, those moments like that, those are things that stuck with me. Just kind of sidebar, like if I had a piece of candy wrapper and I'd throw it on the ground, he'd say, son, no, we don't do that, So he just influenced me in that way, Perfect, man? Not at all. Not at all perfect, but he was very influential in my life as a kid, and I respect him a great deal. And some of my career choices, when I needed to make a better way for my family, I could draw back from when my dad worked nights at St. John's College, and he's security, and I'm under the desk while he's trying to do night security and doing his patrol. And maybe I shouldn't tell that, but and then seeing him go night school and get into correctional facility at Jennifer Road, and going to night school and getting into the sheriff's department at downtown Annapolis, working at the court office. I saw those things, although there might have been some things lacking because of the family dynamics and the relationship. I feel like the man gave me the best he could,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you lived with him till you were in the 5th grade.
Yep.
How come you moved out?
Well, we stayed in Shady Side with my granddad. My granddad passed away, And so my dad was working nights, I believe, at the correctional facility on Jennifer Road. And so I needed some home care, somebody to watch me. And so I moved with my mother's mom, my grandmother, in Newtown. Okay. And so I ended up staying.
Stayed there until you were a teenager?
Up until my senior year. And then after my senior year, I stayed with her a little bit until I met my wife at 23 and we got married.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. So Meaghan, how about you? Let's hear your beginnings. Where were you born and raised?
I don't have quite the story as my husband, but I was born in Washington, D.C., but raised in Silver Spring, so I'm a Montgomery County girl. And I was born in church. My parents were actually the first family that joined the church in Silver Spring. So we were under Pastor Steven and Meaghan, and he came from CLC. He was
born into
an apostolic family, basically. Right, so cool. I started going to church at 6 months old. And
why'd you wait so long?
I know, right? It took that long for them to get their minds right. I don't know. But like I said, my parents were the first family that their pastor had. So we had been, I'd been in church my whole life, grew up under him. And that's pretty much how I was raised. We were raised in church. And
so do you remember when this faith became yours? Because, the thing about being raised in the church is, I was raised in the church too. So the thing about that is you go because your parents are making you go for a long time.
Right.
And, for me, a lot of my younger years, it was fear-based, if I'm being honest. I talked about that a little bit in the first episode. It was a lot fear-based, and so I don't know that I made this mine until I stepped away from it and realized my need for it, as we just talked about. So
right.
Do you have an experience like that where this became yours?
Yeah. So kind of like you said, everything was, I was going to church because, that's just what we did. But even from a very young age, when I was in service, I would cry, I would feel the presence of God. I was very sensitive to the Spirit of God. We went to camp, the church camp in Roxbury. I was, I think, in 5th grade. And that was my first kind of real encounter where I just kind of was lost in it. But even then, I didn't really make a decision until kind of as I got older. I felt and I'm sure a lot of people have felt this way, when you grow up in church, you don't have a testimony. I always felt that way. And so I kind of, when I was in high school, kind of going into college, I didn't all the way walk away and leave, but I definitely was not committed to the walk.
Feel I know you feel like you need to create a testimony.
You need to create a testimony. Exactly. That's literally how I felt. And so I didn't do anything horrible or crazy or anything like that, but I just was not committed. And I had friends that I hung out with, and I didn't really do anything bad or anything, but when you're just not right. And they would do club scenes and stuff like that. And I would go, but I would never feel like I belonged there. It was it was just that weird thing where you're kind of up against the wall and you're why am I even here? This is so dumb. Trying to make yourself you didn't fit in anywhere.
I completely understand.
Right. You're I don't fit in quite at church, but I don't fit in the world, and I don't really know exactly where I am. But honestly, it wasn't until 2008, I had, like I said, I'd grown up in this church, and I just felt like I needed more because a lot of my peers were backslidden. And so I just felt like I needed more, and I was kind of the only one still hanging on. And I went to the boot camp in DC with Matt Maddox, the Soul Winners boot camp. And that's where I met all of Antioch. And at the time, we were only having services in the afternoon at 1:00. We never had an evening service. And Andrew Prasad was like, hey, why don't you come to Antioch at night? And started coming to Antioch at night. And
I'm going to stop you real quick.
Yeah.
When you say backslidden, for people that might not be familiar with that term, it's not one of my favorite terms, but it's just for lack of a better explanation. It's just what, if people that are a part of this church life that we live and then decide it's not for them and walk away.
Right.
A lot of times they're referred to as being backslidden, which I think it's unfortunate, but just for lack of a better term.
No, yeah, that's a good thing to say. They had just decided it, like you said, it wasn't for them,
right.
And they were kind of going a different direction. So I started coming in and one of the reasons I wanted to come was because I heard Bishop Wright was at Soul Winners Boot Camp, and he was teaching this message, and I had never heard anybody preach like that before. And when I realized it was the bishop to this church, I was like, man, I got to go to Antioch. And so when I came to Antioch, it fit, it felt right. I felt like for the first time, like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I was being fed, and that hunger was stirring up. And I think that's kind of when things kind of switched for me, where I realized I want this and I want to walk this road.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you two meet then?
You want to? Okay.
I think the lady always gives the best explanation.
You'll be surprised.
So we met during this whole boot camp situation in DC. But at the time, I met a bunch of other guys like Andrew Prasad. I think Chester might have even been there. I met Tony Lewis. I met a bunch of people. But I met another. We started dating, and so we kind of like were in the same friend group for a while. 2008. So we had the same friend group, like Kevin Breckenridge, Trisha Ellinger, like a bunch of just awesome people. And so we all hung out, and we went to Applebee's after church all the time. So Steven was just always there. And then when the relationship ended, we just continued our friendship, and he kind of just was a friend to me during that time of loss, really, and just kind of trying to find my way back.
So that was a difficult breakup then.
Yes, it was very difficult.
Steve got you on the rebound.
He did.
I wouldn't say I was a rebound. This was probably about a year later, I think, after your guys' relationship had ended. And just one day I was just captivated by her. I'm looking like, man, this girl's, I really like her. And, she mentioned.
Okay, so hold on. We had care group and stuff, or is that what it was called then?
Yeah,
care group?
Yeah.
I think it was at.
Explain what care group.
Care group is like where it's just a group of small group. Yeah. So like it was a young adults or youth care group where the youth got together, and we would share a meal and have like a time of like a lesson that we were learning about or whatever. But at one point, we were at this care group, and they wanted to do like this activity, and so they had everybody write down on a piece of paper. Was it the person you were sitting next to?
Maybe it was the person you were next to, or the person before you or behind you. I don't know.
So it was based on proximity. Yeah. So the person, maybe on either side of you, I don't know.
Who came up with that?
You had to write down the first thing that you thought of about that person. Okay, and so, and I guess based on proximity, I knew that it was yours. So when it got back around to me and I read his paper said pretty face. And at the time we were just friends, but I was like, he thinks I'm pretty. Like, wow, okay. Nice. So yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I did write that. Yeah. So yeah, that was before I really expressed interest, and probably because I just didn't know what else to write at the time. But I do think she's very beautiful, and still at that time and still today. But yeah, so you were sharing how we met. Oh, I was chiming in on, it was about a year later after the breakup, and I had always been a friend, just like probably a number of other people that were in our friend group. And when I was really interested in her, I was just trying to encourage her. There was a ladies' conference that had came around that she attended, and I was just purposeful. I brought the whole CD collection for her. I just wanted to see her grow, wanted to see her just be whole, I guess. That sounds a little cheesy, but
so when you guys meet,
mhm.
where you're graduated from high school?
Oh yeah, I had been attending Antioch
you're
for some
in now.
years.
Okay.
Yeah. I was born again.
Okay.
Looking for a friend.
All right.
No, so we had met, been friends over the years, probably since 2008, and probably around it was the year 2010, November. Yeah, and when I kind of first expressed interest, and she was still just kind of in a different place and really kind of coming through a lot of disappointment and stuff. And probably around February of 2011 is when when we were officially dating. But for me, it was like, nah, we're not just dating, you about to be my wife type of deal. So we started dating in February. July, I had officially proposed to her right before she went to a missions trip. She went to Spain and Portugal. And I had
With AIM?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So I had proposed to her. The next day, I was driving with her and her family to the airport in New Jersey, and we got married October of that year. And so it
was boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
It was February, July, October.
October of 2010?
2011. So we officially started dating and got engaged in. So February we were courting, whatever, and then July I proposed to her, and then we were married in October. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 8 months from the time we started dating.
That's the way to do it.
Oh yeah.
So what was your missions trip like? You went to Spain?
I went to Spain and Portugal. It was cool. It was very modern, so it wasn't like going to Africa or something.
Yeah.
It's just a different kind of experience. But the missionary there, Brother Stones, he had such a heart for the people. It was beautiful. He wept and interceded for the people. We did a lot of like street evangelism, and then there was a lot of touring too. So it was a lot of.
Was it the 2-week one, or was it the one where you go for like?
I think it was 2 weeks. It was like 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those there's two different types. There's one where you go for the 2-week, which is sort of like an appetizer, and then there's like the 3-month mission where you're really embedded with the missionary.
Yeah, and I'm like a homebody, so even going away for like a day was
that your first time away from home?
Yeah, well, not away from home, but out of the country. I went to school in Tampa for a year.
Oh,
My
wow.
first year in college, I went to University of Tampa. Again, like I need to go away and like find myself type thing. But then came back. I went to University of Maryland because I was so homesick. I couldn't be away. So
She was in Spain, and she was homesick. She was lovesick at that time.
Were you guys together when?
No.
A school in Maryland?
No, were you guys together when she went on the missions trip?
Yes, I had proposed to her the day before she flew.
Literally the day that 12 a.m. that morning that I was supposed to fly out, he proposed.
Gotcha.
I want to make sure that he had this
Some
on lock.
Spaniard didn't want any Spaniards picking her up.
So, yeah.
So you get married in October of 2011,
Yes.
and then your journey together starts.
Yes. Yeah, and it was quite a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get into that.
Yeah, where did we start?
Good question.
So, so we, again, we mentioned we got married in October, and we did our honeymoon in Florida. We went to see the historical areas of Tampa, and so we continued to live in Maryland, in Annapolis, Maryland. And maybe you could ask me a couple of questions because there is a lot to unpack. I mean, our first year of marriage was really challenging. I'd say that. Yeah.
Like, what was challenging? I mean, listen.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, it's interesting how marriage works. You're when you're dating, it's all frills and love, but it seems like the moment you decide to make that commitment to each other, if I could say this, the adversary hates that.
Yeah.
and he comes at you hard. I mean, even with my wife and I, everything was great until we got married, and then it was like, man, what did we just do?
Yeah.
So, what kind of things were coming up between the two of you?
So I'll let Megan explain. And these are things that I would say in our Bible study settings and in small groups, I think we're pretty transparent in what we share, and for our audience. And it has been helpful. And I think a lot of young married couples need to have like a real perspective that you grow in your understanding and communication with each other. A lot of times you grow in your intimacy and affection for each other. So I think we experienced the whole gamut of marriage and relationship and growth and understanding each other. And like you mentioned, like, the desire for each other and the feelings for each other. And when you're not married is like, it's like not really much hindrance there. But when you get married, all of a sudden your past starts plaguing your relationship, your subconscious mind of your dreams, things that are affecting how you deal with your day-to-day starts influencing your relationships. And it's really odd and bizarre. And if you don't understand, or have an idea that a lot of things can be spiritual, we do address them in prayer, but then there has to be conversation and understanding as well. But I think Megan really was anxious to grab the mic.
I mean, not to share like super specific stuff, but just in a general sense.
I mean, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Just in like a general sense, like I didn't so there were things that I thought I had dealt with before getting married, past relationships, hurt with my dad, things like that I thought I had dealt with. And when we got married, things just kind of came up. It was like all of a sudden everything was just coming against me. And I'm like, man, I thought I dealt with this. And I realized I hadn't. And now I'm in this relationship with my husband, trying to learn how to be married, but also navigating these things that I thought that I had put behind me.
And just to add, like, these were things that when maybe dating before she met me, these things were never a problem in previous relationships. She never dealt with those mental struggles and emotional challenges. But it's like as soon as we get married, we're locked in. We know we want to be with each other. We know all of that. But then all of a sudden, it's this battle.
Yeah.
So, Megan, I didn't ask you. I mean, I guess because you said you were raised in the church, I just assumed. Were your parents together the whole time?
Yes, they were married, but it wasn't the best relationship. Okay. So I don't want to get like too whatever, but it just wasn't a...
but they're deeply in love now. They've worked through a lot of things.
Yeah, they've been married now, I think, 45 years, and they've worked through a lot of things. But growing up, it just wasn't... I didn't have the best relationship with my dad. He wasn't very emotionally present, even though he was physically there. And so that I'm going to just leave it there. It just, in that and of itself, there was a lot of hurt from that. And so we just didn't have a good relationship. I kind of grew up like being very critical of myself because that's kind of the environment that it was. I felt like I couldn't really do anything right. If I tried, it wasn't good enough. I never felt pretty. I wasn't told I was beautiful. Like all those kind of things you would expect out of a relationship with your dad. I didn't really get. But now, and we've had very in-depth conversations about this, especially recently. But he had a horrible life growing up. And I realize now looking back, he could only give me what he knew. And so it was really like I was expecting too much in a sense because he was doing the best that he could. But in that time as a child, you don't see that. You just see, okay, my daddy doesn't love me, but he did love me, but I didn't feel that. And so there was a lot of working through that even up till recently. We've only just recently got on like a good footing. So
yeah, it's, something I've realized is like when you are a kid, you look at adults as adults. Right. They're adults, so they have their acts together. That's the assumption.
Right.
And then when you're an adult, you look at kids as kids. They're just kids. what we fail to realize is we are all human beings.
Yeah.
And we all have needs. And so when you become a parent or an adult, you realize that the adults that you saw as a kid
We're kids.
just as clueless as you are right now, and they're trying to figure it out
Exactly.
too.
Exactly.
You know, but when you're a kid, you don't realize they're trying to figure it out.
Right.
So it does affect you, and if you're thoughtful enough, you can look at your kids as humans and realize what they are seeing and try to tailor your reactions to that if possible. But
Yeah.
if you're not aware, you know, there's a lot of blind spots.
Yeah.
I guess, am I making sense?
Yes. Exactly. And too, realizing like when I look at my parents now, I realize they were kids
Right.
with parents that didn't have it all together. And so they're trying to navigate life like how we are. We're trying to navigate life as an adult with a kind of a dysfunctional background as a child. So it's like looking back with mercy and looking back with grace and realizing like, again, he did the best he could with what he had. And he's 74 and he is just now getting to that place of finally being free from all of those things that plagued him as a kid. So it's a process, and it's like letting God in and letting him deal with you and realizing like, I need a savior.
Yeah. And the importance of forgiveness. I mean, that's like forgiveness is like the backbone of Christianity. I feel like it's, you know, I mean, even Jesus, his name means Jehovah saves, you know, like it's all about forgiveness.
Yeah.
And we have to be all about forgiveness in order to make relationships work, really.
Yeah. Amen.
Because you can't do anything about the past.
Nope.
You only can forgive.
Yep.
So, where are we in the story now?
Well, you kind of get we transition from hardship, and just to bring a little more clarity, because I didn't want to leave the podcast, because forgiveness is a huge part of my life, and God's helped me to grow and develop that area in my life. So while I'm on the podcast, I wanted to make sure that I share the truth, that it didn't misrepresent anybody in this story. So I mentioned my mom and her drug addiction, and it was a huge problem for her, and it affected the family. So where she had to leave the state of Maryland and go to Florida to get away from the familiar territories that we were in and the access there, she moved to Florida and was a part of a program there that helped her clean her life up. And she connected with a church out in Florida. And I mentioned Paul and Rhonda Gross. Well, Sister Gross was always involved in our family, and Brother Gross as well. But with my mom, Sister Gross would pray with my mom over the phone, be a sounding board, somebody she could talk to. And over the phone, Sister Gross prayed with my mom over the phone, and God filled her with the Holy Ghost. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. And so when my mom passed when I was 15. I didn't mention that. Yeah, so my mom passed when I was just before my 15th birthday. I was at an AAU basketball game with a friend of mine from high school, from Annapolis Senior High School. And his family was kind enough to bring me a part of their team and travel with them a little bit. And while we were at a game, at the end of the game, my dad came up to me and said, "Hey, your mom passed away." And the hard part of that,
man, that's terrible. I'm sorry, man.
The hard part of that, Kevin, was like my mom was sick. I remember she would come to visit during Christmas, and she had lung cancer, and she had one of the quadrants or part of the lung removed. I don't really know the details of that, the anatomy of that. I remember when it was really windy, she had to have a scarf over her face because it was too much wind or whatever. And she knew she was sick, but at 13, 14, 15, I didn't really understand that concept. So we did have a phone call where that year I was on the phone with her probably just before May of that AAU experience and playing traveling basketball, where I was on the phone with her and my uncle had got on the phone, and I was just being more, she wasn't able to speak, and nobody told me she was dying. So that was the hard part for me. She wasn't able to speak, And I'm on the phone just encouraging her, like, yeah, Mom, just being optimistic, get well, blah, 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 just going on with my kid life. And I remember my uncle being on the phone for a long time. He kind of stepped away and was on the phone for a long time. And then while I was at the game, that's when my dad said, hey, your mom passed away. And we end up leaving the tournament, going home. I ended up having to fly to Florida with my aunt, one of my first cousins, and my brother's father. He was a Baptist minister. He traveled with us to pay their respects. And and my older brothers, since they weren't able to go because they were incarcerated. But in all that story, like I said, she passed away, but Sister Gross encouraged me. She said, your mom, that happened. She, God really did a transformation part. Unfortunately, the health, her body was really, beaten down. And but that encouraged me over the years, like, I need to have my life right so I can, experience that same salvation as my mom. So I didn't want to paint my mom. I remember times when my mom was going through her struggles, I remember her isolating herself in the sense she would go into the bathroom or closet just to pray. Like, I remember those moments where I know she was struggling, but it was a part of her soul that was still reaching out for God, and God did answer that. And there were times where I'm living in Robinwood. I walked to school. I walked to the middle school. And before I walk off to middle school, my mom's coming back in the house off of a high. And she's just so sad talking to me, like, I want to do better. I want to change. And I'm this 6th grade middle school kid just kind of taking all of this in. At the time, it didn't affect me. I was just like, I was always a person that people felt like they could talk to and just kind of express themselves, because I'm pretty certain she couldn't do that with my siblings because they experienced a lot more hurt than I did. And so she was just able to talk to me, and I just kind of carried that burden as a young person, not realizing like how heavy that was. And but seeing those moments of like, hey, that's why it allows me to be more compassionate for people, no matter their walk of life, what they're going through, because I had seen and experienced a person really heavily bound by addiction, but I saw that part that still was reaching out for a change. Even though the behavior, the overall highlight of the behavior might have showed different, but that 1% of like, hey, I need a savior. I need someone to rescue me out of this situation. Yeah.
It's important for us to realize that most people that are in the throes of addiction do not want to be there.
Don't want to be there. Yeah. I saw that firsthand. Yeah.
So you guys are married and going through it.
Yeah. Oh, man, this is so interesting to try to unpack. So I would say when I kind of first noticed it was the 5-year mark, right? I'm a little slow. I think as males we can be a little. As males we can be a little slow.
Yeah, we just kind of go until somebody tells us to stop.
Yeah, and my wife previously she had consented that it was probably around the 3-year mark, but I think just the other day when we were talking, she was like, "Nah, it was like year 1." So, man, it's so many dynamics there.
When did you have your first kid?
What was that?
We had Jacob in 2014, so
3 years.
3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was a part. We could start there. To be honest, like talk about the little bit of the inexperience as a first time dad.
Well, the first 3 years, you guys are sorting out
Yeah.
yourselves, and that was difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. We were young, and then just moving on to having a child.
Well, hold on. How old were you when you got married?
23. Yeah.
And you were.
23.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you guys are the same age.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. And so I would say for me, that was the first, when my son was born, and the whole going through the morning sickness and all of that stuff that my wife had, not really having that understanding of like, hey, we're budgeting for chicken and this and that, and then we go to make chicken and you can't eat it, so it crashes the budget, and not really understanding that.
And that's frustrating.
Yeah, it's just inexperience, and then after the pregnancy, the postpartum, as a young person, yeah.
let me just add in there too. So going back to the pregnancy part, obviously it's both of our first times experiencing this. And he mentioned, the morning sickness. I had it really bad. I had it almost the whole time with Jacob. I didn't throw up all the time, but I had that awful feeling all the time. And I had a lot of food aversion, so I couldn't eat a lot of things. But he also still was very involved in basketball. So like you wanted to, so I'm, and this is part of where the frustration came in, and we're still young and we're trying to figure all this out, but I'm in bed and I'm nauseous and I feel horrible, and he's leaving me to go play basketball. And I got very offended with that, and it hurt me. And I mean, it sounds silly, but
no, but it actually does hurt, though. It feels like you're being abandoned.
Abandoned.
Yes. That's real.
Yes.
Obviously, Steven's not abandoning you. But if that's how you feel, that's real.
Yes, exactly. And it was hard to kind of like, work through that and be like, hey, I need you here with me. Like, I know I'm not dying, but this is a really horrible time for me, and I need my husband.
I got a game.
Yeah, I know. We don't get it, man. Men do not get it.
We could laugh about it now because, we worked through it and we've learned. But, that was a real thing.
But, yeah, and I mean, that build up, and then, like I said, things that we were kind of dealing with just coming into the relationship that we hadn't really dealt with. There was a time in our relationship where I was like, I'm done. And I don't want to do this anymore. And I told Sister Angie, I said, I'm not saying we're about to do this right now, but that divorce word is on the table for me.
Wow. Yeah. This is why you're pregnant?
Probably after Jacob was born, because all the, like I said, the different mixed emotions with the postpartum, and then me making decisions, making her feel like I'm not valuing her and different things. And I think it was a combination of different things, because I think the feeling was mutual. It was like, she didn't want anything to do with me. I didn't want to do anything with her, but it was kind of like, it kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit. Sometimes we were good, but then other times we weren't, because we were still probably involved in Sunday school, really involved in Bible studies, but we were going through the normal things that young married couples experience. But if they don't have anyone to help them navigate that part, it can end in divorce. And the one thing I say in our marriage, we never threw that word around. Like I never used the word divorce. She just mentioned about talking to Angie. I think, but we never used the word divorce with each other. We didn't weaponize that as a threat or anything. We were just really genuinely going through things, and our feelings were, I don't like you and you don't like me type of deal.
Well, you just don't know if it's worth it to keep going sometimes.
Yeah. So I would say there were some highlights and some good things that happened in between that period. If I could kind of shift gears, going back before
man.
before Jacob was born. So going back to the morning sickness with Meaghan, Meaghan she mentioned going to Tampa and then going to the University of Maryland, where she graduated, with a nursing degree. And when we met, we got married. I don't know what her parents were thinking, but I was working for Giant Foods. I was
part-time.
Working. She mentioned the basketball thing for a long time. And Brother Gross preached this when I was like a teenager. I remember him falling on his face. This sounds so weird if you don't understand it, but I remember we're in a Robinwood Rec Center having a service with maybe a handful of people, and he's preaching about living this fantasy life. And I don't think he was targeting me. He was just preaching what God was saying, because I was really infatuated with basketball. I love basketball. That was my escape. I was not a top player thing, but I enjoyed the grind and work ethic of getting better and competing. And I did a lot of that, and it was fun. And I gave a lot of guys the work sometimes. And I enjoyed that. But I remember Brother Gross falling on his face in the rec center on this tile, dirty basketball floor. It probably wasn't dirty. Maybe it got sweat, but he's in a suit, shirt, and tie, and he's laying on the floor just sobbing for our salvation. The burden was on him so heavy. And at 13, 14, whatever that age was, around that age, I remember looking at him, and that memory is etched in my mind. It was like him interceding or should I say praying in our behalf, I think really had an impact on how God kind of turned the tables and helped me fully come into salvation. And so I can't remember where I was going with that story, but that was a significant memory for me at that age. And so fast forwarding to I'm working at Giant. That's what it was. I just stepped out of community college, and it wasn't for me, so I needed to find a job. So I started working at Giant Foods, and so I end up getting into and I'm in church at this time. I end up working as a partial pickup guy, which is a card, guy collecting cards, and just tried to have that work ethic and diligence, and then I end up getting into the produce department. And it was really, for anybody who's worked in the grocery store industry or Giant Food, the store 194, which is in Riva, is a really great store to be a part of. It's like one of those $1 million a week show stores at the time. And so it was a great environment. It was career people there, career men there, women that I could like really glean a lot of work ethic, and just they took heart in what they did. And so I was part-time there, and kind of I think I've been there for about 5 years, maybe, probably about close to 5 years. And I was on nobody's radar for promotion. At the time I was,
You were working part-time for 5 years?
Yeah, I think it was about 5 years.
How are you guys making ends meet?
Well, we had
Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus. So I think 5 years. That's going back to 2008.
Oh,
yeah,
not
yeah.
the whole time.
Not the whole time. No,
Okay.
no. So we get to the place where Megan's pregnant, or before she gets pregnant. I'm working at Giant. I'm on nobody's radar for a promotion, but I'm still working hard. My friends had given me books, for my birthday about a man after God's own heart, and it talked about always growing, always learning. When you work, do everything as unto the Lord. And that was the principle that I live by. I never felt like I was the most gifted or talented person, but I always tried to work as if I was working unto God. I try to put the Lord first. And in my approach to my work, whoever I was working for is like, all right, you're Jesus today. You know what I mean? So that's how I tried to approach my work. And obviously, as a young man, your work ethic does develop, it evolves, it improves. So with that I coupled that with putting God first. And so my wife ends up I keep saying this, but before my wife gets pregnant, I'm at Giant Foods. I'm in the back produce box. I'm breaking down the pallets, putting the produce from off the pallets onto the shelves in the cooler box. And I had just been doing the Bible devotion. Maybe I had got through Genesis at that time. I was trying to do the whole year thing. I never was as consistent with that, but I got through Genesis. And while I'm in the back produce box, the scripture from Genesis 28 about Jacob at Bethel. He was at a place called Bethel, and he falls asleep, and he has this dream, of angels ascending and descending on this ladder, and the voice of God speaks to him from the top of the ladder. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but he says, Jacob, all the blessings and promises that I said to your father Abraham and Isaac, I'm gonna do those things in your life. And I'm going to bring you into your father's land in peace. And Jacob says, God, if you do all these things, bring me into my father's land in peace, surely you'll be my God. And of 1/10 of everything that I receive, I'll give back to you. So I'm in the produce box. This is rehearsing in my heart. And I just felt like God was speaking to me. So I lift my hands and was worshiping God. I felt joy, and I just worshiped God. And I had 2 hours left in my shift. And my manager says, hey, they need help at the Bay Ridge Giant. I don't know if some guys had called out, but that was a big store as well during the boating season in Annapolis, so they're getting slammed. So I go down there, and I'm helping. I'm working diligently trying to get these guys up in shape. And one of the managers, Kathy Gardner, was there, and I'm thinking to ask her, is there an opportunity here for full time? And as I'm thinking to ask her, she says, Steve, are you interested in a second man position, which is assistant produce manager? And I said, Kathy, I was actually just thinking of asking you.
Cool, man.
Yeah, I was just thinking about asking you this. And so, to just kind of close the story out, I end up getting promoted to assistant produce manager right after the time my wife got pregnant with my son, Jacob. And so, we weren't balling by any means, but it was full time. I got my pay bump, better benefits. And that's why we named my son Jacob, was because of that moment in a produce box with the principles of just putting God first, and even if you're not on anybody's radar for promotion, even if people like to say not nice things about you, you just keep working to the best of your ability, and God opened doors for us.
But what he didn't mention was at the time I'm pregnant. I get pregnant and I'm super sick, and I'm working as a nurse, full-time RN in a hospital.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And I look at him at night, we're laying in bed, and I look at him and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't work. I have to stay home. Like, I'm so sick. I'm in the toilet all morning.
So you're working full time and he's working part time.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And that was still like 34, 35, 36 hours, but it just wasn't guaranteed 40, and the pay wasn't as high.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm upset because I'm like, what are we going to do financially? I don't know what we're going to do. How are we going to pay our bills? How are we going to eat? How are we going to do all this stuff? And Steven looks at me and he goes, God will take care of us. God will provide. And then he ends up getting this job so that I could stay home.
That's awesome.
She's never worked from that time. To God be the
She's
glory.
never worked
an actual.
We always got to be careful.
Clock. What I mean is she never had to, and I don't say this because everybody's situation and circumstance and God's purposes for them are different. But for us, it was like we felt like her being home with my son was important, and we just maintained that through our 14 years of marriage, and God really prospered our way. So in the middle of like having marriage difficulties, like we could still see the hand of God working in our life. It's kind of weird. You would think like everything stops and shuts down if you don't have everything together, when that's not the case. And I think that's the challenging part for people as they're navigating their relationship. They still see God moving. They still see God blessing. They still see God using them to reach souls and be, a witness to other people, but you still got this thorn in your flesh, so to speak. You still got this conflict in your relationship. So,
yeah, you feel like you shouldn't have all these troubles.
Yeah. And you feel like sometimes it kind of invalidates what God did. You kind of minimize it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you kind of minimize it when really, like I've heard in a number of your podcasts, the people that God used and that he worked through, like there was a lot of things going on in their personal life. There was a lot of things that were happening that we tend to want somebody, if they're being blessed by God or God's using them or working in their life, we expect their life to be so polished and perfect that we expect the finished product day one, and that wasn't like that for us. For our marriage and how deep and how close we are today, it would have been, I don't want to say it would have been foolish, but it would have been discouraging for somebody to say, hey, you guys should be where you are in your 14th year in week one, of your marriage, So, we've seen God do a lot of those things. And even for my career, I remember going to Sister Danny's house, as a sister in the church, and she would host these 4th of July gatherings. We would go over to her house and hang out, a bunch of young people, and we were married. And while I was working at Giant, I remember I had the full-time position. I was working as assistant produce manager, but I remember doing my order every day, scanning them produce items and doing the orders and trying to learn the ways. And I said, man, I need to learn something. I need a skill. I need something. I need to equip myself. And my wife's like, how are we going to do that? We don't have the finances to go to school and do these different things. But for me as the leader of my home, I was like, yeah, we may not know like exactly how it's going to play out, but I know for sure this is the direction I need to go. And so I started exploring trade school options, and we had took a tour of a particular trade school, and we ended up going to Sister Danny's house maybe that week. And at the end, when we leave, Sister Danny always wants to pray for people when they're leaving her home, because she's kind of way out in the sticks, Carroll County. And, a lot of us travel far from her home, and she always prayed for what she would say, traveling mercies, that God would be with us and keep us safe. And while we're doing this prayer, all of a sudden the prayer is like all of us all praying in a group, but then the prayer kind of gets a little more like, not heavy in a bad sense, but how you could say, Lord, thank you for this food. Amen.
All of a sudden the
Spirit falls. And, it was just this kind of, everybody had this idea of like, we're just waiting now. And then Sister Juanita Little was there. And she says, she says, Steven and Meaghan, she says, Steven and Meaghan, this prayer is for you. She says, Meaghan, you need to trust the direction that the Lord is sending your husband. And, you need to follow his leadership and you too, she was just encouraging us as a couple. I remember that particular thing stood out was because we were just that week exploring, stepping out from working at John. I can load shelves, I can stack produce, I can do that. Now I'm like, all right, I'm about to enter into this field of HVAC trades that I have no reference to, So it was a bit of a faith leap for us. And for me as a man to step out into something that was unknown. And so again, in the middle of our marriage.
And she's saying this having no knowledge or understanding of what we're dealing with.
Yeah. And so, again, to my point, what I'm saying is even though we were having some difficulties and friction in our marriage, God, there was still a part of us that was like, God, we need you to intervene in what we got going on,
Right.
with our relationship.
And you're still pregnant?
No, yes. Jacob was born by that time.
Yeah, so when we were with Sister Danny's house, Jacob was little. He was like 15 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had been working as assistant produce manager, and I finished up at I think it's store 384, 390. I don't remember, but it's the Severna Park Giant, another big time high volume store at the time. Eric Schumann, amazing skilled produce manager. He could do the numbers, and she speaks that to us, and so I tell that story to say, like, even though you're going through conflict and you just don't have it all together, still pursue God. Like, it's not gonna look picture perfect in that moment, but if you're patient and if you put the principles of God first, He'll help you and your spouse or whoever, family member. It'll help you guys work through it. We can't expect day one or the final product day one all the time. We have to be patient, and we have to allow God to kind of work through it. Sorry, I started preaching, but that's my lived experience. That's my lived experience,
Yeah. So Meaghan, what's going on with you? Like, you're dealing with postpartum, and now he's talking about a career change.
Yeah, it was
Tell them how you were feeling and all of that when I talked about it.
It was scary. It was very scary. It's stepping out into the unknown, and we literally were like just making it. Like, God, for us at that time, God had always been a just enough God. Like, we never had an abundance of anything, but we had enough to pay the bills, enough for food. And so I'm thinking, well, okay, you're going to school, but that costs more than enough. Like, how are we going to financially do that? And, but God, he always made a way. We ended up, the family members ended up helping us out with some of the finances so that he could do the schooling and everything. And we ended up, he got into Lincoln Tech, and he's doing the night school thing while still working at Giant. So he's going to work, and then he comes home for very briefly and then goes right to school until like 11 o'clock at night. I'm not seeing him.
That's hard on a relationship. Right?
Yes. And I had a 15-month-old at the time. So it's just me and Jacob, like literally by myself all the time. And then we got to the point where financially, like they were increasing our rent at our apartment. And so we ended up moving in. Well, I got pregnant with Joshua. That was the other thing. So while he's going to school and doing all this stuff, ended up getting pregnant with our second son, Joshua, which ended up being a blessing because all of his health issues, which we'll get into, cemented our relationship and really brought us closer together through all of that. So that was a blessing in itself. So I guess we can just transition to that.
Well, I want to say, I think, now you're talking about men being hard-headed. I've been married for 23 years, and I'm just now beginning to appreciate my wife's side of things. Like, as a man, you're just out there, just trying to make things happen. You're trying to conquer the world. You don't appreciate the loneliness that your wife experiences and the head trip that she can go on when she's at home doing her thing. I mean,
100%.
and also, like, for someone like Meaghan, she basically gave up her career
Yes.
to be a stay-at-home mom. And, you know, she's doing that kind of for you and for your family. And I just don't think, I don't know that we appreciate that enough. I don't know if I know that I didn't. I mean, my wife left everything that she knew and moved to Maryland. She born and raised in Pennsylvania, raised in a different denomination. She left all of that and came down here and basically gave herself to me and my life and my world.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to understand the sacrifice
For sure.
that she made. And so, you know, it's when I say forgiveness, like, she has to have a lot of forgiveness for me, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because I was not good at recognizing that sacrifice. And I just want to say that. I just want to say that, like, hopefully she'll hear me say that, but I've said it to her personally. But, you know, for marriages out there, I think it's important that a couple look at each other and see the sacrifice that each side is bringing to the table and be willing to appreciate that sacrifice. And that can go a long way to improving your relationship.
And that's a really good point, because a lot of times it's not that I never appreciated what he was doing. It's that I didn't feel that I was valued and like that what I did was appreciated. So it's like we're both wanting from each other to validate each other. But I mean, how do I say that? It's like, I do appreciate your work and what you do, but it's hard for me to tell you that if I don't feel like you see where I'm at too. So it's that give and take of understanding each other's value in the relationship. So
Amen. So now we can transition to Joshua.
All right, this is the fun stuff.
There's water here too. I mean, if you guys
Yeah, I'll take a sip.
Let's take a quick break before we make the transition. We're back, and we're transitioning to Joshua. So, second born son, he's amazing. So I'm pregnant with Joshua. Everything is kind of the same. Like, I'm still super sick and not feeling well and all the things. And we go to I'm
working at John, still doing night school when Meaghan's pregnant with Joshua.
Yeah. So he's still at night school. But we go to my 20-week sonogram because that's when they do the gender. Find out it's a boy. And I was very upset. Even with Jacob, I was upset. I wanted a girl the whole time. But Steven was super happy. Obviously, brothers, that's awesome. But one of the things that during the routine sonogram, they discovered was, and it was very common in boys, it's called hydronephrosis. And it's a narrowing of the, I forgot the medical term, the tube that leads from the kidney to the bladder. It was kinked, and they couldn't tell whether it was a blockage or whether it was from urine backflowing into like a reflux type thing. And what was happening was it was making his kidney swell, and it was like, I don't know, 2, 3 times, 4 times the size that it was supposed to be. And there's stages. You can have super mild or you can have severe. So it's stage 1, 2, 3, or 4.
And this is while you're pregnant?
Well, I'm pregnant, yeah. So they're doing the sonogram and they're seeing this. And so they had us go to a specialist, so maternal fetal medicine. And they do a little bit more in-depth testing, and they're able to see, based on the severity of this, like the size of the kidney, that he actually has stage 4. And what the doctor told me was that stage 4 is irreversible. So typically it can reverse itself to where kind of like as the baby continues to grow, the kink kind of, it goes away and there are no issues. But in his case, stage 4 was irreversible, meaning, okay, we're looking at surgery. So we knew that kind of right away around the 20-week mark.
There was a stretch of time where we were hoping that, because we heard it could reverse itself depending on the severity of it. So there was a huge stretch of time where we were like really hopeful that his situation would turn around. And I think even maybe you want to reference our experience at the church with.
Yeah. So, well, one, it was devastating because I've never had surgery. None of my family members have had any kind of major operation, and to have like a little kid, a baby, have this condition was very frustrating. The other thing before I do that the doctor told me was that with his severity of the hydronephrosis, they said his surgery was imperative because he would not live to see the age of 2.
Oh man.
So it was like right away, like we knew, okay, this was a serious thing that could be taken care of, but still it was a serious thing.
Was that after we found out about the other kidney inside? Okay, that was before.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. We'll get into that as well.
So you find this out when you're pregnant that your kid's not going to live past 2?
If he doesn't have the surgery, yes. And the doctor was amazing.
Makes so many questions.
Oh yeah, it was. And ironically, and it's not ironic because God is not ironic. He's on time. At the time that this was happening, there was a song by Casting Crowns that came out. Dude, I can't even remember the name of it now. It'll hit me later. But basically it's talking about like, stop holding on and just be held, and how you have all these questions about why. And, I know you can do it. Oh, it says, I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone.
I know.
And then he says, I know the sorrow and I know the hurt would all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't. And so that became my anthem through the pregnancy.
Powerful.
And God, there's a lot of those in Joshua's story.
The part that we hate to say is even if you don't.
Even if you don't. Exactly. Because it's not up to us. And we don't see the end of the thing from the beginning. And that's hard for us to understand and grasp. So I'm pregnant. Another month goes by. I'm about 6 months now at the time. And we're here at church, and Brother Jeff Morgan comes, and he's ministering, and he had been here for a stretch of time, a couple of months.
Like an era.
Yeah, it was awesome. And so I don't even think he got to really preaching. It was kind of like this whole worship and then just outbreak in prayer type thing. And Steven and I are up front, and everyone's worshiping, and the music is going, and it's just this awesome thing. And all of a sudden Brother Jeff Morgan comes down, and he's in my ear, and I'm like, what in the world? And he goes, what do you need God to do for you? And I said, there's something wrong with my baby's kidney.
Are you still pregnant?
I'm pregnant. Yes. So I'm like 6 months at the time. I said, there's something wrong with my baby's kidney. And he just leaves me and goes up on the platform and shuts everything down and starts talking. And yeah, he has his son come up, and before he does that, he says, he tells the congregation, he says, listen, he was like, I didn't know there was something wrong with her, but when I asked her, she said there's something wrong with her baby's kidneys. Now, he said kidneys plural, and I was upset because I felt like he wasn't accurately portraying. I didn't want people to think it was greater than it needed to be. It was just one kidney. He had 2. He's going to have surgery, okay. But he said kidneys, and so that kind of stuck with me. He had his son come up and give a testimony about how when his dad gave a word of faith for some child, I don't know where they were. Yeah, the kid had a tumor on his right eye. He was a young child. And Brother Morgan had given the prayer of faith and prayed over it, and the tumor disappeared. When they went back to the doctor, it was gone. And so that was the kind of level of faith that was in the room, and that's the prayer of faith he was praying over Joshua. And so they prayed the prayer of faith. Man of God came down, laid hands on me, and spoke that. And I believed everything was, and we had an appointment coming up like that next week. And I was like, ooh, God is so good. Like, this is awesome. We're going to go to the doctor, and the kidney thing's going to be resolved. He's not going to need surgery and whatever. Yeah. And that wasn't the case, but God had us go on a journey. So go back to the doctor, everything's still the same. So, and it was a faith journey for us just from the beginning. And then throughout all this time, before he even gets to, well, actually, no, he was born first. So we ended up making it through the end of the pregnancy. He was born, did a sonogram in the hospital. He had 2 kidneys, and there were measurements for both of those kidneys. And that was August. In October, we went back to do a dye test where they injected dye through his veins to see the flow of the urine. And this would determine whether it was a blockage or whether it was a reflux, to determine how they would do the surgery. And so as they're doing this test, it was a couple hours. He was exhausted, and we got home.
He's an infant?
He's an infant. He was 2 months, August, September, October, 2 months old.
Wow.
2 months old. And the doctor, I didn't answer the phone because I missed it, but he left me a voicemail, and he says, I don't know how, but your son only has 1 kidney. And so basically, he was born with 2. The right kidney had the hydronephrosis issue that we were going to fix with surgery. But when they did this dye test, they could no longer find the left kidney. So the left kidney atrophied and was gone. The right kidney is still there with this existing issue.
Oh, man.
So, and what he told me was basically kids can have either anomaly, but it's very rare that you have both of them simultaneously. And so now we're coming to...
So, I mean, the deal with kidneys is if one stops working, you still got the other one. So
Exactly.
No big deal.
Yeah. Exactly.
So now all he has is a bad kidney.
All he has is a bad kidney. Yeah. Exactly.
Or a kidney that needs some repair. You know, it was in functioning properly, but the surgery would enable the flow of the urine to make it to the bladder.
And I remember too, before he was born, I actually remember this now, the doctor, when he was looking at the hydronephrosis, he was like, oh, it's no big deal. He's just got 1 funky kidney. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, okay, cool. And then fast forward, he's only got 1 kidney.
Right.
And so that was it's the funky one. Yeah. So,
man, that's hard. That's devastating news, right?
It just compounded. Everything just continued to compound, and it was a lot of why. It was a lot of tears. It was a lot of just.
And you're expecting this turnaround because of this Jeffrey Morgan.
Yes, yes, and along the way, actually, there were several other. I remember Pastor Wright had us come up one time, and this lady who had been watching the service, she said she had watched Antioch for years.
She's a minister in Alaska.
Yeah, she was in Alaska. And she said she just felt prompted to turn on the service. And I think she watched the whole thing. And at the end, Pastor Wright has us come up and basically is explaining the situation with Joshua. And I'm actually getting ahead of myself a little bit because this is after everything. But just so that you understand, she said she watched and Pastor Wright was explaining the whole kidney thing and what the doctors were saying. And she gave a prophetic word saying God was going to heal Joshua's kidneys. And it was a lot more in depth. I can't remember the details at the moment.
I think she had a similar testimony of God doing a miracle. For her daughter or something.
Right. So she said, I think it was for her daughter. Her daughter had some kidney issues that the doctors were saying that had to be fixed by certain means, and God ended up healing her. And so she said, that's why God had me watch this service so that I could tell this couple God's going to do it. And so
something I've learned, and again, that was a great encouragement, right? It just kind of helped us stay anchored. And we just trust God. And we had that attitude of even if you don't, even though we were more leaning to the Lord do. But it was little things that would seem coincidental. But I really believe that it was a purpose to encourage us. But I've also learned that doesn't mean God's going to do it the way you think He's going to do it. And it doesn't mean that, I guess I would say it doesn't mean it's going to happen in that instant, you know?
Absolutely.
And that was one of the messages Pastor Wright actually preached during the time we were going through some of this stuff. He was like, God will give you a word, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen today.
No, I think when God gives you a word, that means it's going to be a while. And it's probably going to start to look like
worse.
It ain't going to happen.
Exactly. And that's exactly what started happening. But before we get into that, so Joshua, they wanted to wait until he was about 6 months to do the surgery because he wasn't heavy enough. So for the anesthesia, they wanted him to be a certain weight. So in February 2017.
What's it like? What's it like raising him when he's got this condition? Like, what kind of baby was he?
Amazing. Yeah. The most laid back, happy, smiley, never cried.
Good. Wow.
And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, God is so intentional in the things that he does because he chose this child for all of this stuff to happen to. And he it's like, it's the best day of his life if he has to go to the hospital. Yeah. I'm like, and yeah, he has the greatest attitude. Yeah.
He came out of the womb just happy-go-lucky, just hands in their hair, smiling, head bobbing. Where his older brother, when he was born, he had this like wrinkle in his eyebrow, looking around like, why am I here in this world with you people?
Jacob still looks like. I look at him sometimes and I'm like, man, why are you judging me?
Right. He came out like that.
Mind, yeah.
So he was a great baby, great kid. He was wonderful. I was Joshua was amazing. Yeah. We
have some videos. That's why we can laugh like right now, because we were looking at some videos of him when he was a kid, and just the same personality he has now, just magnified. He was like that as a kid, just awesome. Happy, and just the little lisp they have as kids and stuff. It's just hilarious.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah. So he was born in August, and then we fast forward to February. He's about 6 months old. They decided to do the surgery, and the surgery was a success. So they determined it was a blockage, and what they did was cut out the blockage and then sew the tube pieces back together. Mm-hmm. And so he had the surgery, comes through it just fine. And what they were expecting to see was that this hugely overgrown kidney would now begin to shrink back to normal size. Mm-hmm. And it was doing that. We had follow-up appointments. I think it was like every 2 months or 3 months. And every time we'd come back, looks great, smaller. It was already like 50% shrunk within like 2 months. It was amazing. He was healing well. Doing great. And the doctor told me, I don't expect anything long term. This is something that he does on the regular. He's known for this procedure. Mm-hmm. Very skilled professional doctor. And he was doing great, had great expectation for Joshua. And so he heals well, continues to do well. And I think he was about 15 months now, so almost a year later, he ends up getting a stomach bug. And he was sick for several days. It was almost a whole week. But with this, it was constant vomiting and diarrhea. He got better from that. But then a couple days later, he spiked a fever. And when he spiked this fever, we didn't really know what it was. But after the fact, we realized, he ended up getting super, super sick. We took him to Anne Arundel Medical Center. And they did a cath to see if he had a urinary tract infection. And it turns out, like when they did the cath, his pee came out like amber, like a dark tea, like if you're drinking tea. So I knew right away, just based on my experience, okay, he's got a urinary tract infection. I put it together after the fact. I'm like, it's because of the diarrhea. He was laying in it overnight. Sometimes I wouldn't see it until the morning. And I'm like, that's how he got the bacteria. I'm like, okay. They're running all these different tests. They took tons of blood, and we determined not only does he have the urinary tract infection, but he is now septic because, and I know you're familiar with that because we've talked about Ava and her journey. So the bacteria had left the urinary tract, left the kidney, and is now traveling through his bloodstream. His numbers are out of whack. He's essentially in kidney failure because of how hard his body was working. So his kidney had shut down, and they're pumping him with all these meds to try to get things to kind of get working again.
The thing with sepsis is there's no guarantees.
Yes.
Once that sets in, all you can do is treat it and hope for the best, and that's what's so scary about it.
Yes, it was very scary. And the doctor, when he came in, he had these very sober eyes, and he looked at me.
I hate that.
Yeah, and he said, "Your baby is very sick." But the awesome part was he came down, and I wasn't praying publicly. I wasn't doing anything that would allude to the fact that I'm a believer. But this doctor who's like 6'4", tall, sweet African-American man, he came and kneeled next to me, and he held my hand, and he looked at me and he said, "I know you're a believer."
Wow.
And he says, in times like this, when things are so uncertain and we don't know what to do, he was like, "I remember these scriptures." And he read, I think it was Isaiah 23:6, which talks about keeping your mind stayed on him and how he'll give you perfect peace. And then he read Philippians 4 about casting all your care because he cares for you and the God of all peace, and that whole thing. And to me, it blew my mind because it was like in a moment where my world was crashing down and I didn't know if my baby was going to make it. This doctor, God used this doctor to encourage me to be like, you know what, I'm here in this moment where you don't see me and you don't feel me and you can't perceive what's going to happen next. I'm right in the midst. And that was God continued to do things like that through this whole thing. Yeah. And so my sister's with me at the time. I call Steven and I let him know all the details, and the doctor said basically we can't treat him here. He's too far gone. We have to transfer him to Children's. So they sent an ambulance, transfer him to Children's National. And the frustrating thing and the scary thing was while they're in the ambulance, all these medicines that they're administering, because your kidney does so many things. It regulates your blood pressure. It creates red blood cells. Potassium, like all these things are filtered through the kidney. So because it's failing, he's got this influx of potassium in his system, which you can go into arrhythmias, cardiac arrest type stuff. His blood pressure skyrocketing, and he's not responding to the meds.
Only how old?
15 months.
Oh, man.
And he's not responding to the meds, and I'm hearing them kind of frantically trying to figure out what they're going to do. Like, okay, what are we going to do now? And not knowing that I have a medical background, so a lot of the things that they're saying I can understand. And so that doesn't do anything for my nerves. I'm sitting there listening to all this chaos going on.
This is a baby.
He's a little baby. And so we get to Children's, and about an hour or two after we got there, he finally started to regulate. His body was responding to the medicines. And the doctors basically told me, hey, we're going to put him in ICU because how severe his electrolytes and things are. We have to monitor him. Thankfully, after about an hour or so, he didn't need to go to the ICU. We stayed in the ER until we could find a room. We were there in the hospital for about almost a week. It was like 6 days. And they're just monitoring him, pumping him with fluids, pumping him with all the meds to help regulate blood pressure and potassium and all these other things. And the doctor came in and she told me, she said, he's going to need a kidney transplant at some point. And I said, a kidney transplant? Like, he was just fine. Like, why all of a sudden does he need a transplant? And she said, well, the kidney, the way that the urinary tract infection was, it damaged his kidney so bad that he is now in stage 3 kidney disease. And that's not something you can reverse. It just only kind of progresses. And so now we're dealing with that diagnosis when, just a couple of months ago, the outcome was, oh, great things for him. Nothing on the radar. I don't expect his life expectancy to be any different. He should be fine, and after a point in time, we're not going to have to do these follow-ups because he will have healed. And now we're looking at, okay, a transplant. And so this is where kind of like our world kind of begins to crumble because we have these words. And constantly, I remember I would go to a doctor's appointment and the doctor would give me, more bad news like, nope, his creatinine, which is a kidney marker, is continuing to increase, which means his kidney is decreasing in function. And that would continue to increase and go up, and I'd leave feeling so defeated because I'm like, God, you said. And I remember one time I came home and I just so happened to open my phone, and there was this song by James Wilson. I can't remember the title of it, but the words were, when God gives you a word, it's ever settled. So basically you can take it to the bank type thing. And the lyrics were just everything I needed to hear. And I'm like, God, you're confirming, like out of the blue, like out of nowhere. I don't even know this guy. I don't know who James Wilson is. And it's on my phone, and I just decide to play it. And it's everything I needed to hear to encourage me. Danny Hood comes one time and he preaches a message about if God is giving you a word. And I'm like, and I'm looking at Steve, I'm like, are you hearing this? Like, clearly God is talking to us.
This is after the bad reports. Like every time we get a bad report, there will be somebody either speaking directly to our situation who didn't know us, or just speaking a general word to the congregation.
So we have all these things we're holding on to. And then the song Waymaker, Miracle Worker, that was my anthem. When he came home from the hospital after the sepsis and that whole thing, that was the song that anchored me, because I knew he would. I believed that. We had word. There was no reason to believe otherwise. God's a healer. He's going to do it for our son.
When he came home, he had the pick line, like your daughter in the podcast had mentioned, having to deal with that. So I'm listening. I'm like, yeah, we remember that. Him at 15 months, I guess you were saying.
Yeah. So he comes home. He ends up coming home, and he has a home health nurse for a little while because he comes home with a PICC line for antibiotics.
Yeah, we had that.
Yes, and it was a little frustrating because he's super little, so he doesn't understand that he has to sit still for a while because of the amount of medication we had to give him. So we put Barney on, let him watch Barney for a little bit. But
shout out to Barney.
It was so. I remember coming home from the hospital and just feeling so defeated and overwhelmed by this new diagnosis after believing for so long that everything was going to be fine. And now all of a sudden we're in this new realm of, okay, his life is never going to be the same. And I remember crying, and just the home health nurse is there and she's weighing him and doing all these things. And I'm just crying, and I'm losing it. And then I go to put Joshua on the floor to stand up because he wants to walk around. He's starting to feel a little bit better now. And he collapses to the ground because he's so weak. His body didn't have the energy to even sustain him to do the simple things of standing and playing or whatever. And it was so hard to adjust to that new reality.
How do you keep going? How do you handle it?
Honestly, it was things like that song and the word. Like, there were things that I could hold on to that brought me back from that really dark place of, because you can get really depressed and just kind of lost in your own, world of everything crumbling beneath your feet.
I would say too, just we kind of both had a determining mindset, like that, how we were going to approach it, even though it was hard, like our emotions were taking us other places. We did have that determining mindset, like, hey, we don't feel like staying in the fight, but that's what we're going to do. Yeah. And we would just, some days, my days were bad, some days her were bad, and we would just kind of try to pick each other up, try to encourage each other. But I think there was a stretch of really not understanding and really frustrated and even questioning these, people who speak in what we believe to be prophetic and under God's unction, yeah.
Are you still in trade school at the time?
No, I'm. Yes, I was. Because I was. Was that okay? So no, I was done.
So that started to stabilize at least a little bit.
No, actually, I was going to school when I started with Crop. I was going to Montgomery Community College. Yeah, their ACA program. Yeah,
so you still had a lot going on that end.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. And he had just started with Crop Metcalf 3 months prior to this whole sepsis kidney failure thing. And so he had to take off work to be in the hospital, which was, not a huge deal, but just, again, we're starting this new phase of life and just wanting to do things right. And it's like he's got to call out for a whole week.
Understandably, but it just, you feel that pressure
Absolutely,
of, man, I'm about to what
are these guys going to think of?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I remember there was another time we were living in Silver Spring at the time. We'd moved in with my parents, and then we had ended up getting a apartment of our own in Silver Spring. And I remember one day coming home from just a really bad report. Again, like things are continuing to go downhill. Kidney function is, 20%, So when he left the hospital with sepsis, his kidney function was 50%. And then it just continued to decline.
Does he have to go on dialysis or anything?
Not yet. So, and actually we never got to that point, but we'll get into that too.
Okay.
And now that's the other thing. So after he leaves the hospital, he now is on all these meds. He has to take medicine
as a baby,
as a little kid.
How do you
yeah,
administer medicine to a kid.
And this is the thing about Joshua. He's so amazing. I would crush it and put it in applesauce or whatever. Never complained. He had one liquid one called nystatin that was supposed to be one of the worst tasting medications, and he downed it and wanted more. And the doctor, she said, "Is he having any trouble with medications?" I said, "Dr. Modgill, this kid loves meds." I was like, there is no problem taking medicine.
That's good. My kids hate it.
Yeah. So again, God is very he's very mindful and involved in like how he chose Joshua to go through this is like, it's just so mind blowing. So he's taking all these meds now. That's another thing that we're adjusting to. So we're in Silver Spring, and I remember him still being, he was probably 2 at the time. And I was sitting on the living room floor, and I was sitting kind of like Indian style, and I was holding him and I had him in my arms, and I just was crying out to God, literally like gut wailing from deep, deep in, that desperate mom cry of, God, like, why are you doing this to my kid? Like, he's the happiest kid ever. He's so wonderful. And he suffered so much at such a young age. Like, I don't understand why it has to be this way. And he climbed out of my lap, and I just fell on the floor, and I laid my face in the carpet, and I just wept and wept and wept, and just kind of getting it all out and giving it to the Lord. And so I had many moments like that where it's just a constant giving it and giving it again and giving it again.
I was just going to say, so in all of that difficulty, we were still in that early stages of our marriage and still dealing with a lot of challenges in our relationship. But when Joshua got sick, it really brought us closer together. It really kind of helped us anchor deeper in our faith. I think that's what really happened. And I mean, it drew us closer together, opposed to like, a lot of relationships especially when it comes to finances or children getting sick, it can just understandably kind of just create a great wedge, But I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that.
No, that was.
Yeah. So yeah, that I think that was with Joshua getting sick. All of that stuff we explained earlier in our marriage, it didn't like just miraculously fix everything. But that was I think, would you agree that was the defining moment or pivotal moment of like really when our bond became a lot deeper, awesome. I would say. Yeah.
Because we at that point, like, we recognized like we are not making this through without God. Mm-hmm. And so it was a re-anchoring of our faith together, mm-hmm. moving forward together, going through this together.
I was just going to say, and just to give perspective, still involved in ministry, still doing Bible studies, still attending church faithfully, still giving faithfully, all the check marks.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that, like, you can't, sometimes we assume that people don't need folks, and we never had this problem at our church. Like, people would constantly come alongside us and encourage us. But sometimes we can be deceived by the outward and mm-hmm. think everything's put together in that relationship or in that marriage, People, we need to be mindful. Here I go preaching again. We need to have eyes for others, mm-hmm. And not feeling like we're on the island alone mm-hmm. in our struggles, So.
It's good to hear, Meaghan, it's good to hear you share these things, because in church, you just see everybody's brave face, and you're like, and you look at a couple and you're like, man, some of the things they're going through, and it looks like they're just taking it like champions, and no one understands those moments of weakness where you're just like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm out, man.
Yeah.
This is not worth all this.
Yeah.
And I may like give the perception through people listening to this that I was just strong and faithful. I had my moments of on my face again, like she said, on the floor, just ugly cry, because the emotions are real, the feelings are real, but we just kind of determine in our hearts, like, I know God is real. I've had many experiences in my life, in my encounters with God, and I may not understand all of his ways and why difficulties come my way, but I was like, there has to be a purpose in this. Mm-hmm. And but I've had those same processing those emotions of crying, that weakness. Can I share one?
Please do.
So while I was at Giant, this was one of the things that really kept us too. While I was working at Giant Foods, and I was working as an assistant produce manager at this time, I was in Severna Park. And there was a vendor that came through our store regularly. She was a Frito-Lay vendor, so she would come in and stock the shelf with that product. And she had older lady. She was sharing how her son, I believe he had lupus, I think it was, and she was sharing, and she just started kind of breaking down and just kind of was really emotional about it. And I think she had walked away, and I can't remember exactly if that was the same day, but I remember God had prompted in my heart to share scripture with her, which was a scripture written by Paul. It said, where God says, my strength is made perfect in weakness, for where, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the exact quote in my head, but, where I'm weak, God is strong. His strength is made perfect in my weakness. And I shared that scripture with her, and I think you were pregnant with Joshua at that time, and I don't think we knew about his kidney stuff up until that point. And I shared that scripture with her, and she grabs her phone. She says, I have that scripture saved on my phone. Somebody just spoke that to me yesterday.
Awesome, man.
Right? And then that was Wednesday. Then Thursday night, we have a Thursday night service, and Pastor Wright preaches a message solely around that scripture about strength being made perfect in weakness. And I think following that's when we found out about Joshua's hydronephrosis early on in the when he was in the womb. So like those type of moments, it's like I don't understand, and I've learned to stop trying to figure out how it's all gonna miraculously play out. But it's like I have enough conscious mind to realize, okay, God, I know you're doing something. And I think through the sickness, through all of these uncertainties, through the bad reports, through things taking a turn in a direction we didn't think, the one thing that's constant, God's trying to let us know is my strength is made perfect in weakness.
So hard.
Yeah, and
so hard to come to that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things he's trying to develop. And we realize like we're going through it, but this is Joshua's journey. Mm-hmm. Joshua's the one that's living with that. We're a part of it, but in reality, like he's the one. He's gonna grow. He's mature. I still believe God to do miracles in his life. And my son's been born again. He's been baptized and been filled with the Holy Ghost. He loves God, and he believes God to do great things. But he has the mindset of, hey, I'm just on this journey, and whatever God does, he does. Right. But just that takeaway of God's strength is made perfect in my weakness. Yeah. As a man, I had to come to the place and realize, like, when he got sick and they mentioned transplant, right away, I'm going into fix mode. I'm trying to find out all the diets. I'm trying to find out everything I can do to try to, and I had to realize there's going to be things in life that are really out of my control, and I have to lean on God the most, Yeah.
And so one of the other hard things was, on my good days when I'm encouraging myself, I'm good. And I'm like, okay, God's going to do this. He's going to show up and show out. We've got all kind of word. And so I took that to another level. And when I went to one of his appointments with his nephrologist, she was trying to do certain things that I wasn't super comfortable with, just because I just have a different perspective on things. And it was nothing like that was like life-saving, like that I was denying or anything like that. It was just options that we could pursue. And I remember telling her, I'm not comfortable with that because I believe God's going to heal my son. I literally told her that, and she stopped and was like, how? And I was like, I don't know how, but I believe he's going to do it. And she thought I was crazy. And so that was a big step for me to step out and actually verbalize to someone else, kind of like a non-believer, that God's going to heal my kid. And so I have that also replaying in my head as, you know, we do end up getting a transplant. We'll get there, but that is just a lot of things. And so Joshua ends up, and the other thing I failed to mention too, when he had the sepsis, when we were in Children's National, God shows, he constantly showed us that he was there, one with the doctor, but then two, I had a friend from my mom's church who works nights, and she was there, just happened to be there working, of course, came in, gave me a hug and encouraged me. Do you need anything? Brought us snacks. Another friend of mine from nursing school happened to be working on her shift. She saw my post on Facebook and came down to the ER where I was, gave me a big hug. Do you need anything? So there was people in my life that God was bringing back around to be like, okay, I'm here with you in this moment. So now fast forward, he's got the stage 3 kidney disease, and it's kind of this way for several years. It's just maintenance, like going in every 3 months, adjusting his meds if we needed to, continuing to see the decline in function. And eventually got to the point where we needed a transplant, like a meeting to discuss, okay, we're getting close now. This is what transplant is. This is what to expect. We saw counselors, we saw dietitians, we saw psychologists, we saw the whole gamut of people just preparing the parents for what transplant looks like. Yes. Well, that was the other thing. Before we did that, so we had this whole just kind of an understanding so that we knew what transplant was. And then we get to, okay, you're his parents. Let's see if you're a match. And so we do all this different testing and stuff. I ended up I was a match, but I was not able to give my kidney because as a child I had a kidney issue that I outgrew, but they didn't feel comfortable having me as a donor. Steven ended up being a match as well, but we did not feel the peace or the release to have him be a donor. And
we hadn't even gotten to that, to where it was a critical decision to where I had to be a donor. I think what actually ended up happening was close to your birthday. You mind if I jump into that part? Just to get into the transplant part. Yeah, close.
Well, before we go into that, something I just wanted to interject here is one of my struggles with all of the, and I want to see if you guys, if this is something you can relate to. One of my struggles with the medical challenges that we've dealt with in my family is just you just wish you were normal, you know.
Yes.
Like you look at other people, and you just you just know that you're not necessarily like everybody else, and you know that your life and the life of your kids, it's gonna be a never-ending thing of doctor's appointments, and you're just always gonna have to do it. I'm always gonna have to go in and get this battery in my ICD changed, and it's not it's not a big deal because that's all it really amounts to. But you just want to be normal. You know what I mean? It's just knowing there's something wrong with you.
Right. It
can be sort of a trip on your head, a head trip.
Yeah. And that was part of the reason I never wanted to do a transplant, because I knew that's life altering. You're on medications for the rest of your life. As a child, you have restrictions, like he's not supposed to be wrestling and roughhousing. They do, but they're not supposed to, because of the potential to injure the kidney. He can't go in lakes and rivers and oceans because of the risk of infection. If he has a tiny cut, he's at way more risk than anyone else of getting a bacterial infection.
And those are the things nobody realizes. Yes. Nobody sees that. Like those little inhibit or whatever, those little boundaries.
Yes.
It just separates you,
Right.
and it's hard.
It is.
You know, if you go on a if you go on the church camping trip, and you got all these kids running out into a stream, and he can't.
Yes.
That just
Yeah.
plays on you.
And it actually happened this summer when we went to not the Antioch camping trip, but the regular Maryland DC trip. They have a period of time during the sessions where the kids get to go play in the creek. They do something in the creek, and Joshua couldn't do it. So
yeah, that's the part of this whole thing. I don't know that that's the part that bothers me the most, but it really does get to me sometimes.
Yeah. And thankfully, though, he's got, like I said, he's got an amazing attitude. So he adjusts very quickly to disappointment, and I feel like we hold on to it a lot more than he does.
Right.
So again, so we're doing the transplant, a meeting with the doctors and stuff, and it gets to the point where the doctor tells me, you could get a call at any time. Like, he's at that point. You could get a call anytime. And what we're going to actually do is we're going to go ahead and put him on the dialysis, get him set up for dialysis.
One more question for you.
Yeah.
When you guys are making this decision for the transplant, does that feel like a capitulation? Does it feel like, you're expecting this healing,
Yeah.
and you got to get a transplant? Are you feeling like, what does that mean? You're believing for something, and it's like,
Right. Yeah.
So
you're giving up.
I honestly didn't give up until, because even when we got the call for a transplant, I'm still believing. I'm like, okay, you can do it, God. They could go in there and look and see full functioning kidney. They could go in there and see 2 kidneys, and there was only one before. Like, you could do it, God. So it wasn't until he was actually like under the knife and several hours had passed, and then they come out and they say everything's done, and the reality hit me that my son just had a transplant. So that was when it came to that moment for me.
Yeah. I was waiting for you to speak on it, but yeah. So, I think, for me, I wouldn't say it's the same, because I still feel like God can do anything. I believe God will do anything. And, it's just along for the journey. It's kind of that mindset of, even if all of the things that I've held on to don't play out in my lifetime, like, I still convinced that you have said that. And I think there was an element of, okay, we're at a place where, I think for my wife, I don't know if you communicated the way we've talked about in the past, but it was like, that was the one thing that you didn't want to see. Yeah, is Joshua getting a transplant. And it was like, your faith was so big and so strong up until the point of, hey, we're doing this.
There comes a point where you have to say yes or no to the transplant, right?
It wasn't really an option. It was,
we weren't going to say no.
yeah, it was obviously it's like, okay, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm like, this kid is his body's working so hard to survive, and we don't have an option unless God comes in and does what he does.
So then you're trying to, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but then you're trying to take all of the words that you've been given and fit that into, what does that mean?
Yep.
And this circumstance, it doesn't seem to, they don't seem to jive with each other.
And it wasn't until and that was the thing. I was like, God said. But as we got closer to transplant, Steven and I actually ended up having a conversation. I remember saying, God never said he wasn't going to have a transplant. He said he was going to heal him. Now, I do not believe the transplant was the healing, but at that point in time, it was kind of the realization, we may actually have to walk this road, and maybe the healing will come after. But I had always put it up to no transplant, but he didn't say that.
Yeah, that's where I was too. That was the conversation we had.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
but to answer your question about that pretty much answers it, but there is still the element of, hey, this just doesn't seem to fit. to be all honest and fully transparent. It doesn't seem consistent. And it's almost like all of these things have definitely happened in a supernatural way.
There's no way to deny that these words are real. I mean, they're coming from you out of nowhere.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's part of the journey. Those are elements of faith walk that I won't fully understand, but it's different than how I would expect it to happen.
I think when Silas, I haven't gotten deep into my family's history, but when Silas had to have his open heart surgery, that was the most devastating thing for me, is because I was expecting, Amy and I felt like we had a word about him being healed and not needed. We felt like we had a word about him being healed, and our assumption was that he wouldn't need surgery.
Right.
And it was devastating the day that we had to like set the date for the surgery.
Yeah.
Because we expected the doctor to be like, we don't know how to explain this, but.
Yeah.
And a part of that too is, just for the listeners, like, we know people who have went in to have brain tumors removed, and they open it up and the tumor's gone, or the tumor, they don't have to do an incision. The tumor just fall out,
right. You want that to be your story.
Yeah. Or you have going to do a certain type of surgery, and whatever that cancer was or that thing, God had healed it, and then the doctors did not have an answer for it. So it's not like a blind faith. We love and serve a God, and he loves us that can do these things and have done it. Yeah.
So as we're getting closer to transplant, they were they were telling us we're gonna go ahead and set him up for dialysis, just to kind of, because he was kind of at that point. Now, if you looked at him, you wouldn't be able to tell, because he was very much himself. He still had a lot of energy. He was happy, and he was like himself, but the numbers were saying he needed it. And so they were getting ready to set him up. Now, mind you, at this point, we had already had another kid, Judah, but I'm now pregnant with my fourth child, Hannah.
My
baby girl, best thing ever. And that was the other thing. There was a bigger age gap between Judah and Joshua. I always wanted my kids to be 2, like 2 years apart. We had a separation because I did not want to be pregnant and going through a transplant at the same time. And so there was a bigger gap there. We had a lot of issues, like just with the meds and everything with Joshua. I just didn't want to deal with it. And so now here I am pregnant and dealing with, okay, now the transplant's actually going to happen.
Oh, wow. Who's pregnant with him?
So I'm going to... So then we'd start doing family, not devotionals, but I guess it was devotional. We were sitting down reading the Bible together as a family, and we're reading the book of Job. I mean, we had started from Genesis, and now we're in Job. We were doing chronological. So we're in Job, and I'm reading out loud, and I'm reading the verse. I get to the verse where it says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And I paused, and I kind of it hit me like really hard as I'm reading it. And I'm like, okay. And I'm just kind of hiding that. This is the day before my birthday. This is March 6th, 2023. March 7th, my birthday, 2023. Getting ready to plan for my birthday. We're going to go out to eat, hang out with my family. Like, it's going to be, I just love birthdays. They're so fun. I get a call from the doctor. We have a kidney. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I'm not 100% if this one's going to work, but be on standby, because if it's what we want, you're going to go in. And I was like, okay, this is 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and my sister's at my house, and we're getting ready, like literally we're getting dressed to go out. And I was like, all right, okay. And they call me back within like 30 minutes, and they're like, yes, this is the kidney. We're going to go ahead and do it. We want you to be at the hospital by 5 p.m. tonight.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay. And they gave me all the details, and I hung up, and I was just in shock and actually angry, because this was my worst fear ever. I never wanted to walk this road. I believe God was going to heal him, and now here we are, like having to pack up, go to the hospital, and it's my birthday. and I'm pregnant. I'm like, God, you got all these marks against you right now. Like, you're really.
He knows how to push your buttons, man.
He pushed all the buttons that day, and it was overwhelming. And I called my family and I let them know, and we packed up, and Steven came home from work, dropped the other kids off with my parents, and we took Joshua to the hospital. And actually before this, we had a what do you call that? Like a false alarm.
Yeah, we had a call.
In the middle of the night, they called us one time and they were like, be prepared. There's a kidney available, but we have to check it first and make sure. And we're laying in bed and I'm just crying and he's holding me and I'm crying. I'm like, babe, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do a transplant. And they called back about half an hour later. We don't feel right about this one. So we dodged that bullet.
Yeah, you're thinking,
okay,
God's doing his thing.
Okay, cool, God. All right, cool.
She was hoping she'd be able to deliver the baby before that. Too.
I wanted to have Hannah first. I didn't want to be pregnant and dealing with all that. So now it's my birthday. He decides, this is the one. And so we're getting him ready. We're at the hospital and he is excited. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So excited. He's like, Mommy, I'm going to get my own room and I get to eat pizza there and I get my own TV and I get to push the button and the nurses will come when I call them. Like, he's got such a great attitude. Meanwhile, I'm dying inside and I'm like, buddy, you have no idea what's about to transpire. Like, your life is about to change permanently.
She didn't say that, but that's what she was thinking.
In my head, I'm thinking these things. I'm like, you're about to have someone else's organ sustaining you. You're about to have these medications that are toxic, that we're going to pump your body with these toxic medications to keep you alive. Like, what a concept. And so we get to the hospital. They decide they're going to do the surgery in the morning. So we ended up staying the night. And at 5 a.m., they came back and they said, okay, we're going to get him ready. So we walk back to the, what is that called? The not the waiting room where you're back with him, triage. Yeah. He's got his little gown on and he's in the little hospital bed. And Andrew Nielsen, again, not ironically, because God is not ironic. That weekend before my birthday, it was like literally 3 days before we got the call. Andrew Nielsen, who is also a kidney transplant recipient on more than one occasion. He was kind of the person that helped prepare us mentally and emotionally for some of the stuff we would endure. He bought Joshua a plush kidney toy with this little smiley face on it. And it was just the most adorable thing. And he loved it. And so then 3 days later, we get this call and he's taking this little kidney with him to the hospital, in bed with him and everything. And so it's like 5:30 in the morning and they're doctor comes back and they're going over all the stuff with us. And it was, I think, they said like a 6 to 7 hour operation. So he was going to be a while. But God is in everything. And a friend of mine from nursing school who I hadn't seen in over 10 years, she was his nurse in the operating room.
Awesome.
And she said, don't worry. I'm going to watch him like a hawk. I'm going to take care of him. I'll text you updates. Don't worry, he's going to be fine. And I'm like, okay, God, like clearly you're very much in this, but it was really hard in the moment. And so we get back, he does amazing in the surgery. We go back to see him and he's in some pain, and that was hard to see him so uncomfortable. He's got all these IVs and everything coming out of him. He's got a central line. He's got all these things, and he's so little. He's 6 years old, and I think the hardest part for him was just adjusting to the pain. But literally the next day he was doing so much better with pain and was pretty much back to himself. He was flirting with the nurses. He was playing Legos, like eating all the things. And
he has these honey brown eyes. And so the nurses couldn't resist doing everything he requested. It's like ice cream, whatever, And
he just has an amazing smile and great personality, so everybody loved him.
It's another detail that we missed out early in Joshua's story, which just kind of just showed, God being mindful. I always say my wife is like God's favorite person because she's like, from when the doctors kneeled down and shared the scripture to just happened to have the friend from nursing school being there, and just little things like
All
that.
these things, yeah.
All these things to, I think when we first ended up at Children's Hospital, Kevin and Katie were there, right?
That was after transplant.
That was after transplant
Yeah.
with their son.
Yes.
Okay.
So, that's like probably day 2 or so of the actual transplant. Joshua was in the hospital for about 10 days. And our really good friends, Kevin and Katie Breckenridge, their son, William, has a heart condition, and he's had open heart surgery, but he had to be, if he got like a cold or something, his oxygen saturation would decrease. And so they had to be very mindful of that. And on one particular day, his oxygen got too low, and the doctors told them to come into the ER. Well, I had gone downstairs just to go get a snack. And as I'm walking down the stair or coming off the elevator, right in front of me is Katie Breckenridge, my best friend. And I'm like, girl, what are you doing here? And she was explaining everything. And she comes in to give me a hug. And I said, you know what? I can't take a hug because, they had all these precautions. Like, we don't want him to get sick or whatever. And I'm just standing there, and I'm like, you know what? No, God orchestrated this. Like, I need a hug from you. So she was able to hug me. She cried with me. She prayed with me. And, it's like, it's just amazing. Like, in your darkest time, and God sends these people as reminders that he is so involved in every single detail. And so that really encouraged me. They were able to get discharged. I think the next day he was doing better. So he was there. Joshua was there about 10 days, doing really well. He had a few visitors. Pastor Wright came and brought him a Mosasaurus from, I guess, I don't know, Walmart or something. But the day that we were getting ready to be discharged, I remember being so overwhelmed because the doctor comes in, the pharmacist comes in, make sure I understand how to take the meds. At this time, he doesn't know how to take pills, so a lot of it is liquid medication. Some had to be refrigerated, some didn't. It had to be this exact dose and this exact time, and it was so overwhelming. And I have all these pregnancy hormones, and the lady's sitting there trying to explain everything, and I'm just losing it, and I'm crying right in front of her, and she's seeing it as this positive thing, like, your son had a transplant, this is good. And I'm dying inside. I'm like, you don't understand. I never wanted this. He was never supposed to have this. So to me, this is the worst day.
Right.
It's the worst possible thing that could happen. And she kind of can't understand where I'm coming from, but she leans in and gives me a hug anyway, and just kind of holds me and encouraging me. That was really hard. And they told us we could go out. Children's has this, it's called a healing garden. And you go out, it's like kind of like on a rooftop, and they've got this beautiful garden area and like turf. And then in this garden area, they have these rocks that people have placed that you could write things on or whatever. And Josh was out there just to kind of get some fresh air and relieve him from the hospital setting. And he walks over and he picks this one up. And it says, "You are healed." And he's holding it up, and he's holding it. And Mommy, look what it says. You are healed. And I was like, it was kind of a punch in the gut, because I'm like, one, transplant's not the healing, but two, it was a reminder that, okay, God did say. And it was even in that moment, Joshua was he didn't realize, he was showing me like, God did say, and I'm going to be healed. Yeah. And so,
God's been faithful.
Yeah, I was just going to say, God's been faithful. I think the biggest thing we've gotten through all of this is community. Mm-hmm. Having friends that have been there for us and can kind of empathize with our, challenges. I think that's the biggest thing that's happened over the years. And obviously us kind of coming together in a deeper way. So that's been like my positive takeaway through some of this.
Yeah, and so we end up after all the instructions and making sure I understand. Do you understand? Do you understand? Do you have any questions? Here's this number if you need to call. If he shows this sign, call this. Like all these things. We get home and we kind of try to resume like a new normal type of life, and it was a couple days. I think we finally picked up the Bible and resumed kind of like what we were doing before. And again, we're in the book of Job because that's where we left off. And I'm reading aloud. And as I'm reading, I read, I can't perceive you on my left, can't perceive you on my right. I don't see him in front of me or behind me, but he knows the way that I take. And I started crying in the middle. My boys are looking at me and they're like, Mom, why are you crying? I'm like, this is exactly how I feel.
God is so good, man.
He's so good. I'm like, you don't understand.
You're getting me teared up.
I don't see him. I can't perceive him. This is not the road I wanted to take. But here he is showing me he knows my way, even though I can't perceive his way. And again, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, throughout this whole thing, there's been things where he is constantly showing us, I am here in the middle of it. I know this is not what you wanted. It's not what you prayed for, but it's my will. I've got you, essentially. The other thing that was really, really hard, which I forgot about until this moment, was Joshua had stents placed to keep the ureter open, because they attached the ureter. That's what the medical term that's called, the tube that connects the kidney to the bladder. The ureter was attached to the bladder with stents to keep it open and make sure there was a free flow of urine. We had to eventually get those stents taken out, and it was fine at first, but after the pain medicine wore off, this boy did not want to go to the bathroom. He was holding his pee because he was dreading every time he tried. It was the worst pain he'd ever experienced, and it scared me so bad. I'm still pregnant with Hannah, and I'm in the bathroom, and he's screaming at me. He's like, Mommy, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. I can't. And I'm just like, buddy, you got to. Like, I know it hurts, but you've got to. And I've never heard him scream like that. And it was just like kind of that last straw for me. It was so horrible. But we get through that. He's eventually starts to feel better after a few days. And at this point, I am bitter. I am angry. I feel so far away from God, even though he was there showing me these things. I'm like, it was the complete opposite of what I had believed. And those songs like Waymaker, Miracle Worker, those were anchors in the beginning. Now they were like cuts in my heart. Like, God, you're not a waymaker. You are not a healer. You're not a miracle worker. You are a liar. Like, these are all of the things that I'm experiencing. I would come to church and I couldn't lift my hands. They would sing about how God was so great. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. And I had such an accusatory, bitter attitude towards God, who was just trying to show me that he loves me, and he was still there, and I couldn't receive it. I was so angry. And it went on like that for a few months, and it wasn't until Brother Shelton came, and he was giving his testimony about all these things that had happened in his life, and how, it wasn't the road he would have chosen, but how God orchestrated all of these events for his good. And it was something about what he shared that all of a sudden it was like my eyes were open and I could receive it. And I was like, you know what, God? It wasn't the path I would have chosen, but you're good. And I could finally lift my hands, and I could finally sing those songs again, and I could finally attribute good attributes to God. And it took a while. It took like 9 months. It was a long time, but God was so patient with me and never let me go. He was constantly reaching, constantly showing me I'm here. And so I'm in a much better place now. Obviously, I'm able to, like I said, we're doing Bible studies, we're involved. I feel so much closer than I was, and I don't have this bitterness towards him anymore.
You guys are small group leaders now too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that is, I can really relate to what you're saying as far as your feelings towards God. And, you're like, I would never do this to one of my kids.
Right.
Like, I would never intentionally do this. So,
Right, to prove that I love them.
Right.
Like, I would never intentionally inflict pain upon them. But then the other thing too is I realized after the fact, that scripture that says, and I think Ava even shared it, all things work together for good. And I realized, okay, it's not necessarily talking about my good in terms of like my circumstance, my here and now. It's my eternal good. So if this is going to draw me close to him and this is going to make me more like him and get me to heaven, it's a good thing.
And not only that, it's also like we look for the miracle, and we want the miracle to be the thing that keeps us out of all that trouble.
Yeah.
But we don't realize that the miracle is that we get through all that trouble and we're stronger and we're closer to God because of it. And people around you watch that, and you don't know what your walk is doing for them. Because the thing I've learned about God is he never does anything for one specific reason. There's so many facets to everything that he does. It's one thing that he's doing, but he's effecting 100 different things with that one thing.
Yes.
And I mean, I've been inspired by you guys, you know. Honestly, your marital relationship is something that I really have a deep respect for, and it inspires me. I mean, I hear the way you guys talk and joke with each other, and I think it's really cool. And I try to emulate that sometimes, even though I've been married longer than you guys. But you guys have been had a great effect on me and the way I try to approach my marriage and God and everything. So
amazing. Wow.
So do you have something you want to say, Steven?
No.
Okay.
I guess just for us, like you were saying, God has those greater purposes. And for me, in all of the testing and the trial, it goes back to me that foundational thing of my strength is made perfect in weakness.
Yeah.
I just want to be pliable in God's hands, and whatever tools and methods he chooses to use to shape that. We've been through some early trials these past 14 years that I can see like it's working for good, you know?
Yeah.
And even too, looking at Joshua's relationship, with God, this boy is a prayer warrior. And I don't think he necessarily would have delved into that depth had it not been for what he's gone through. Like, I see the hand of God on his life and how he's so spiritually minded. He goes up to the altar and he's praying for other people while he's himself, dealing with things. And it just blows my mind. And I remember Sister Boyer told me, she was like, this is his testimony, and you don't know what God is going to do to him and through him. Do not pray this off of him. Yeah. And I was like, yes, ma'am. Like, you're right.
One of the most amazing, you'll remember this, Meaghan, one of the most amazing things I've seen it was just so cool. It was, I don't know if it was a part of the worship service, but there was a moment in one of the recent church services where I looked over. I'm going to get choked up, but I saw all four of your kids kneeling at the altar together. I mean, they were squeezed. They were so close together. They were touching each other, but they were all knelt down, heads down, and crying out to God. Yeah. And I mean, Hannah's how old is she?
She's 2 now.
She's 2 years old. So you've got, what are their ages?
So we have 11, 9, 5, and 2.
And so you have those, the ages of those kids, they're all kneeling down together. It was an amazing thing to see. It was really cool.
It chokes me
and
up
I
too.
saw you take a picture of it, and I would like to post that picture when we drop this episode. I'd like to put that picture up so everybody can see that. So I guess we can go ahead and land this.
Sure.
So I want to thank you guys for coming on, and I mean, we've been here for a while, so I appreciate you giving so much time to this and for being willing to share and be transparent about. You've said some really deep things, and I really appreciate you being that transparent, and I believe that's going to help a lot of people. So is there anything that you guys would like to close out with?
You got anything, man?
You're good?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, guys, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
And Steven and Meaghan have now stepped down from the stand. And I thank you so much again for sharing and being so open. As we heard in that testimony, allowing God to have his way in our lives does not mean that everything is going to be rainbows and unicorns. His plan for our lives often means the path will be paved with hardship. He uses hardship in order to mold us into His ultimate design. When I think of Steven and Meaghan and their journey, I am reminded of Romans chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. Therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, by whom also we have access by faith into this grace wherein we stand, and rejoice in hope of the glory of God. And not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. The tribulations or issues that God allows in our lives gives us the ability to endure. And when we endure, we gain experience. And that experience gives us hope because we know that if He got us through the last time, we know He'll get us through the next time. And that hope that is grown in us, we can also spread to others when they encounter their hardship. Steven and Meaghan's journey, as well as Joshua's journey, isn't over yet. But through every leg of their journey, God is showing them that He is in control of every detail. After she left, Meaghan asked me to share with you how good God is to her, in that while she was so bitter and angry after Joshua's transplant, God answered her heart's cry of having a daughter. And after having 3 boys, God chose to give her her baby girl, Hannah, in the midst of the darkest time of her life. Well, thank you all for listening. I hope that you have been blessed by this testimony and been able to draw some inspiration that will perhaps help you hold on a little longer if you're on a journey and you're not sure where it's headed. Please take the time to like this episode or even leave us a review. If you haven't done it yet, we'd love it if you would subscribe or follow us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram, and as always, I'll leave a link in the description so you can find us easily there. Thanks again, everybody, and until next time, we are adjourned.